Hello, my name's Sean Brown from WiSen Innovation, and in this WiSen Quick Guide video series, I'm going to show you how you can deactivate a node from any associated computation. Just to give you a kind of background as to where this may apply. Now, a node is it's reporting false readings, and perhaps it potentially needs a site visit to investigate and realign the mounting bracket, or a node is it's reporting false readings and the user wishes to not offset and realign the data as they associated this to be still within a false situation. Therefore, they would like to suspend, or in the WiSen platform, deactivate the node from reporting any future false data. The aims here is to not utilize the false data values in any computations, but perhaps you are happy to substitute for a valid epoch value in the past. So you're allowing the interim calculation results to still be calculated whilst you are waiting to undertake a site investigation. Now, to give a quick example, this could be a railway line where a node is used to calculate twists between corresponding nodes, and you're wishing to continue on with that calculation of twist in the interim period whilst you await a site investigation or a possession to rectify. Or perhaps the aim is to not utilize the false data values in any computations, but you'd rather remove the node from any computations altogether because perhaps you have no planned possessions in the forthcoming period. Now, with regards to all the above, it's important to note that if the data age of a valid point or valid data is selected, then you must set the back computation time range limit accordingly within the WiSen platform. So we'll come to that within this video. Okay, just to give you a real-world example, we have here on the screen a railway project, and I'm informed one of the nodes has taken a knock, and if I sort by the worst values, so as we see on the screen, we've got a node here called dnMain underscore node 2, and this client has already deactivated the node. Now we can see here that the readings are what we would deem false, and if I click on one of the axes, we can see here that this would be the true representation of the data. The node has taken some sort of discrepancy or knock, and this has happened a couple of times. Now, because of the fact that it's not returned to its previous position, or the readings are not consistent in a new location, the analysis is that the node has perhaps been knocked off track, is no longer mounting on the sleeper correctly. Therefore, perhaps the user does not want to offset and renull this period of data and then continue that node reading going forward. Instead, what they'd like to do is deactivate that node so they can undertake a site investigation. But also, considering what I mentioned earlier, perhaps they'd like a computation still to be utilized for a period of time, or a data period, or a data point, should I say, that's true. So, for example, points in this region. So just to go back to the table of data, one of the first things to do, and as I pointed out, this client has already done this, would be to deactivate the node so that it's not receiving any future data. Therefore, it freezes it at a certain time period in the past. So you can see here, the 19th of the 3rd. So that node is still alive on site as of today, but that data is not being uploaded and utilized within the WiSen server. Now, to deactivate a node, we go to Setup, Node RefID and Deactivation. We obviously scroll down, find the node of interest, and we press Deactivate and Save Changes. Now, the other aspects or decisions that now need to be made is, would you like that node to still be utilized within the computations whilst you await a time window or a possession to visit site and to rectify. So that is quite a subjective opinion now, I suppose. If that period of time was substantial in terms of so many weeks before you have a possession, then perhaps using old data, there becomes a point in time where it's unfeasible to continue that process. But if this was maybe a couple of weeks and you're happy for that to be utilized, the next process would be to remove the bad data that exists in that node so that a valid data point is then utilized within the computations. And obviously to do that, that is undertaken through setup, node offset, and archiving that bad data set. So if we pick the node of interest, now it doesn't matter whether we're picking X, Y, and Z, essentially archiving is undertaken for all three axes, irrelevant of which one you select. But for this example, I'm going to select all three. We press add offset, and we know that there was last valid data on the 19th. So if I go back 3 days, we can see here that data period. So for example, this is a valid data point on the 19th, and I would like to utilize that within the computations going forward, even though it is an old data sample. So this is the current example I'm going to show you, and the process would be to right click, add, start point, go to the most or the last point, we go to end point, we have that data selected, we can then right click on it, archive it, and then that will remove the data from display. Obviously I'm not going to undertake that for this client at the moment, but obviously that would then leave the remaining valid data to be true, as we see here. And then obviously any associated computations we see associated to that remain true, but maybe a little caveat within the report needs to be that dn main underscore node 02 is an old data sample from such and such date, just so it's clear to any end clients. One of the key things, as I mentioned on the presentation, is if you've undertaken a railway model, then obviously if that data sample that it was on the 19th is older than 4 hours from the current epoch, then you need to change number 3 here, back computation time limit, so that it is utilizing that old data sample. So the default was 4 hours, so the data age that's been utilized, you would have to set this as max, therefore that old value is then utilized to calculate the twist and the long section going forward. Now, one of the other bullet points I mentioned was that perhaps you've decided to deactivate the node and you'd like to remove the node from any computations and not utilize a valid data point from the past. Well, in this example, as we see on the screen here, the client has removed the node that was sitting between number 1 and number 3. And that was just undertaken by pressing this button here, a multi-deletion. The only issue that has, obviously, is if you've got twist, you're now having a false twist represented between 1 and 3, so any kind of graphs, reports, tables need to be rectified because you're retaining that false information. And obviously if you've got a long section, you might need to extrapolate the spacing that is between 1 and 3. For example, that is now 6 meters, so that would be 6 here as opposed to 3. So these are the considerations that really should be undertaken. So in some respects, I think utilizing old data is better. And lastly, one of the things to be implemented by WiSen going forward will be a capability to do twist pairs. So for example, if you have this situation and you do not want to report a twist pair or a long section associated to between 2 points that are not valid, then the aim is to release a version or a tick box exercise here where you can exclude twist from a calculation. Hopefully this gives you an insight really in terms of deactivating nodes but continuing computations.